If there is anything true about anxious thoughts, it is that they multiply. We tend to worry over people or things that we care about. These thoughts take you down a rabbit hole. If anxiety is an emotion that signals the potential threat that you face, then you need to feel safe about that thing. But how? How do you regain safety? First, can you recognize if this is a perceived threat or a real threat? This sounds so simplistic, probably because as you watch this video, you feel calm. You're not facing any threat or harm in this very moment. What actually happens when you are triggered to anxiety is that your mind can program itself to think various things are a threat that are actually not. It is a virus of the mind, and these are thoughts that send you into a cascade of worry. You see, we as humans hate anything that is painful or uncomfortable. It is our brain's natural self-preservation tactic. The drawback of this defense mechanism is that it is embedded. Your brain becomes programmed to think a certain way, and it becomes difficult for you to be aware of. Notice that I said difficult, but not impossible. It is a learned behavior, meaning just as easily as it was for you to learn it, the hope is that you can unlearn it or learn something new. You can grow your awareness to this reactive style of thinking. Your solution to rewiring your brain to the reactions of your environment is to increase your felt sense of safety. This can happen by teaching your body to become less reactive to actual threats in your environment. A helpful cognitive skill for you to retrain your mind is to distinguish what happened in your past versus your present. A big part of distinguishing the two helps you become more in tune with how you have resourced yourself throughout times past. The very real reality is that you are not the same vulnerable person as you were when pain from your past happened. Let me bring you back to the rabbit hole. That cascade of worry that your thoughts can send you down, that is the rabbit hole. Anxiety will manifest as worry a high percentage of the time. Worry is any kind of thought that says, what if? If there's anything true about anxiety, is that anxious thoughts multiply, meaning you cannot think just one what if question. You're bound to think 2, and then 4, and then 8, and then a cascade of worry can strike. Something to recognize about worry is that it's future tense, meaning it's about a situation that has not happened yet. And as a result, it's not even guaranteed to happen. In recent years, a modern psychology called cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, has developed. This breakthrough teaching reveals that many addictions, eating disorders, life's challenges, relational problems, stress, even symptoms of anxiety and depression, all of it has some connection with how we think. It's rooted in negative and faulty thinking patterns. Our lives really do follow the direction of our thoughts. And the better that we grasp that information, the better equipped we are at changing the trajectory of our lives. A fun fact, some of the oldest text in our history, biblical scripture, actually says the same thing. In Philippians 4, chapter 8 through 9, the Apostle Paul teaches us, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned, whatever you have heard, whatever you have seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. Those are Apostle Paul's writings and his instruction on how we ought to think. In these 3 sentences, Paul moves from thoughts, he says, think on such things, to action, put it into practice, and to experience. The God of peace will be with you. Paul tells us that thoughts shape our lives. I don't know about you, but when modern psychology and ancient biblical scripture are saying the same thing, I'm listening. And I want to know more. So put this into practice. Because CBT and ancient biblical scripture say the same thing, that thoughts impact the trajectory of your lives, thoughts seem like a pretty big deal. We're talking about the whole rabbit hole of experience. What we understand is thoughts influence emotions, emotions influence behaviors, and behaviors reinforce the thought. Faulty truths and beliefs become real because of how we feel. If we follow the CBT model in ancient scriptural truth, kind of a tongue twister, we see that thoughts influence emotion. So a helpful question, a helpful cognitive skill is to ask yourself the question, what is the likelihood that this thing that I'm worried about is going to happen? Additionally, if it does happen, how survivable is that? What that question does is it flips you on the defense and it forces you into this position of having to take offense. What kinds of things would you have to resource yourself with in order to survive that situation? This is the way that anxiety is beneficial to you. It's not necessarily a bad thing that your body becomes in tune with a stress response. It's a sign that your body is getting ready to mobilize. That's a resource to you. It's a very empowering stance for you to be in. Not all anxiety is bad. But as I describe worry in detail, there's some things that we're starting to learn about worry because it's future tense, because it's based on things that have not happened yet, and because it's not guaranteed. That makes worry a little bit faulty, right? It makes worry inaccurate. And if we sit down and look at that, we have to ask ourselves, how is it then that we can believe something that's so faulty? How can we believe something that is filled with so much distortion? The believability is based on how you feel. How you feel is more of a reality as opposed to the thoughts that you can conjure up in your mind. The racing heartbeats, the repeated thoughts, the racing thoughts, the sweaty palms, the difficulty breathing, difficulty catching your breath, that's a very real physical sensation. And the thoughts that are connected to those sensations, pay attention to what it is that you think about, because this can be your ticket to being resilient in these situations. If your thought patterns are empowered and filled with resilience-based thinking, where you are reminded of things that you are capable of, things that you're able to do, ways that you have survived in times past, now all of a sudden you're thinking from a place of resilience, you're thinking from a place of empowerment. You combine those thoughts with the stress response, the physical stress response that you have. Now all of a sudden you're placed in high demand with high resources, and your likelihood to come out of this situation is more likely to be positive. To build resilience-based thinking, I will leave you with a CBT skill called examining evidence. Here's the practical takeaway. Anytime you think a what if question, challenge yourself to ask, what is the proof? And what that does is that positions us to counterbalance some of the thoughts that we have when we know that it is not supported by any kind of evidence. When we don't have the proof, then this allows us to rework the thought, and ultimately we can reframe it. We can regain balanced thinking when we have sufficient evidence to support our thoughts. When we have balanced thinking, we have healthy emotions. When we have healthy emotions, our behaviors become a reflection of how we feel. Thank you for tuning in. If you've made it this far, thank you. I'm Kayla Rochelle, licensed clinical social worker. If this video was helpful for you, be sure to like this video, drop a comment of something that stood out to you, share this video with anyone that you think can benefit from it, and I will see you next week.